Welcome to the Homeschool Together podcast. Where one working mom and a stay-at-home dad help you navigate the nuts and bolts of the growing and dynamic world of homeschooling.
With a focus on early learners, like me.
All the ins and outs of building and maintaining your homeschool life.
Homeschool.
Find out tips and tricks to make things like this easier.
I'm reading.
And ultimately, enjoy educating your kids. And what's that last thing?
Have fun together. Did I do good, Daddy?
Yeah, you did, sweetie. Good job. Hello and welcome to Homeschool Together. Thanks so much for joining us. If you haven't had a chance, head over to iTunes and leave us a review, and head over to YouTube where we have our great YouTube video series of kindergarten books that we love, that Ariel has been so wonderfully gracing our faces and doing wonderful reviews of wonderful kindergarten books. I think it's been a great little series that we've launched. If you haven't had a chance, head on over there and check it out. So today we had an interview.
Yes, with Kristin Dexnis Rosengrant. She was really awesome, and she's doing something a little bit different, which we haven't gotten to talk about before on the podcast. She has a cottage school, homeschool in New Jersey, where she homeschools for extra subjects, some other children. She's got, I think, 6 other children, and then her own daughter, so 7.
Yeah, so she calls it a cottage school, which is kind of a cool little term. I know a lot of us have either been part of cooperatives or parent partnerships like we are. This is kind of a different model, a little bit different, and it's kind of fun to see the creativity that the pandemic has created with respect to the homeschool world. I think there's a lot of great innovation and a lot of new ways to re-envision homeschooling. And I think this was a great interview where, she kind of explained what she does and what her life was, and she is a homeschooler as well. And so it's a nice way for her to blend those two unique worlds together.
Yeah, and find some great opportunities to do some group things with her child. And it's a really neat model that I think is really cool that she's, allowed to do there. And I don't think we are allowed to do that here.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I think it's really cool that she can do that in New Jersey. And it was just really fascinating to talk with her about how that got started, how what subjects do you teach? How do you teach a group for homeschool? So it was really cool. And then we got to discuss her homeschool journey as well. Why she came to homeschool. And I love these interviews because there's always some nugget. There's something I just wasn't expecting. Like
something
I kind
different,
of, I kind of think I know what we're going to talk about before we sit down with the person we're going to interview. But there's always something that surprises me. And I think that this one, like all the others, has just been just an eye-opening and fun and engaging to listen to. So we hope that you all enjoy this interview with Kristin as much as we did. Welcome, Kristin. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, we're excited to talk with you. So just to get started and get us grounded, can you tell us about your family and your background, why you chose homeschool?
Sure. So I am married to Lou, and we've been married, how many years? I think it's 16 years. It was 16
I think
years
we're coming
this
up
summer.
on 16 as well.
It hasn't been 16. Hasn't been 16 years.
I think so.
No, it's 13.
17?
We've been together 17 years.
We digress. Please continue, Kristin.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to get the biggest Christmas gift ever. Sorry, your 16 years of blissful marriage. Continue.
Exactly. So 16 years. And then we had our first daughter, and she's 7. And then surprise, like 5 years later, we have a son, which was totally a surprise, but a wonderful one. And so now he's 2. We decided to homeschool. This was never the plan, to tell you the truth. We were friends with all these people and related to all these people who were like, this is a hot topic right now, but like anti-vaccine, this and that, you're having a baby, don't do that. So we were like very cautious new parents and visited all these doctors and all this stuff. And I was like, you know what, this is all moot. This is all moot. because our kid's going to school. So
Mm-hmm.
why are we even bothering with this, But then when she was about 2, actually, yeah, she was 2, I took her to our doctor, who I love. And the doctor said, okay, well, it's time for her to go to school. I said, she's 2. She's 2. But the doctor was like, oh, it'll be really great for her, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, how often should she go? Like, can I just find a little play group maybe once a week? And she said, oh, 3 times a week, that would be, the ideal, this and that. If you could afford it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking that's a lot. I don't think I could do that. So I called around different schools in the area, said, could we do just one day, just one? And everybody was saying, no, you have to do a minimum of 2 or somewhere a minimum of 3. And then I found this little lovely school that said, sure, you could take her here for one day. And so that's what we did. And about a month into it, I said to my husband, this doesn't really make much sense because I work nights and weekends. And why would we ever send her to school when she's little? Why would I do that? And he said, I completely agree. And that's how it all got started. And it was just kind of this, yeah, we'll do it for preschool. It's no big deal. We'll do it for kindergarten. And then the pandemic hit. Before that, we were sold on the idea, but once the pandemic hit, it was just like, oh, well, there's no going back. So that's in a nutshell how we got started.
And so she's 7 years old now.
Yeah,
I think you said, okay. So she's basically, first, second grader type of thing. Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. Yep. Did you go into the homeschooling with a certain, methodology or thinking or a certain type of way of homeschooling, or was it just kind of like okay, I'm just going to start gathering materials and start doing stuff? Did you have like a thinking around that?
It was everything that you just said.
Okay.
I loved the Montessori way of doing things, all that hands-on and the practical life, all that stuff. And I got a book and we would go through the book and it was so simple, you know what I mean? But it was like, oh, let me check that off. We did that. I looked at a little Montessori school and loved, how they did everything. And the snacks were out and they could go pour water for themselves anytime they wanted. And they had to set the table and they had to wash the table and they had to, there's so little emphasis on like learning ABCs or, they did that, of course, but it was in such a different way that I just, my mindset was so blown away. I was just changed by seeing how they did it. So I did a lot of research on that. I listened to a lot of audiobooks. I read books. I looked at videos. So we primarily did that when she was like 2 to 3 years old. And then I became obsessed with YouTube, as you probably have as well.
Yes.
Tried a whole bunch of different curriculum. I can't even tell you how many I tried because I don't even know where they are anymore. But a lot of things did not stick. But what ended up sticking was all about reading, which I think, aren't you guys doing this?
Yep.
Yes, we are. We're almost done with the first level. Yeah, I have like 2 more lessons to go. Yep.
Yeah, it's just like all those games and we would just play on the floor and she would like color the letters with glitter and paint and we would just read things. And it was just, I was like, this is it. Like, this is how we do it. And then we did preschool math at home, a Kate Snow book.
Yep. We did that with Torchlight Pre-K. That was really good.
Oh, wasn't it fantastic?
Really
it was just like so eye-opening to me that this could be school. You know what I mean? And we just had such a lovely time together. And it was just such a sweet time, just the two of us, sweet time.
Then you had a second kid, if I'm right.
Yeah. So my son came along.
Yeah. Then the boys came along.
The boy came. So yeah, while that was happening, I mean, I was so tired and I was just
Yes.
sick the entire time. Um,
Mm.
so that changed things a bit. But still, I felt like that helped me through everything, to tell you the truth. Like,
Oh, wow.
just like waking up and knowing like we're gonna have this time together. Oh gosh, you just reminded me. Like in the very beginning, feeling so ill, she would come down, she would climb into my bed, and we would have bed school.
Yeah.
And we would have like a little reading lesson in bed.
That's awesome.
I had that book, 100 Easy Lessons.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm. I'm using
And
that too.
yeah, it was just so easy. We would read that, we would read books. I don't even think by that point I was doing math. I just like gave up on everything. And then we would like watch some kind of a video together. And then by that point, we'd have to like eat a little something and we'd go to the Y. Like we would do that almost every day. And
Wow.
then she would play with the kids like in the child watch room. I
Mhm.
would go swim because it was the only thing that made me feel human at the time.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
understand.
And then we'd come home, she'd take a little nap, and then I'd have to go to work, which I own a dance studio, a very small dance studio. So
Mhm.
hence the working after school hours and
Mm.
weekends. So and then she would go to the babysitter, or sometimes daddy would be home in time. Um, but yeah, so I feel like homeschool really helped me through that whole terrible
Yeah.
time.
It sounds like it
Um,
kept you grounded a bit. So since you
yes.
weren't planning to homeschool, what what did you used to think before you started? What did you used to think homeschooling was like? I have my own preconceived notion, but I love to hear, you know, did you envision it was going to be like, and how was it different from that?
That is just, yeah, that's so funny. I mean, probably what everybody thinks, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
the
Awkward, unsocialized
antisocial,
kids.
Yeah.
exactly. And I knew a homeschool kid when I first took over the dance studio. My student assistant, who would help me with like the little baby classes, she was homeschooled, so it was great. She could be there at any time I needed her. And but she was always so shy and
Oh,
but
yeah.
so polite, and
Mhm.
she always had such a way with the little ones and knew what to do. And but I would try to talk to her, but she'd just be so like, oh no, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm like, well, how do you do math? What is it? Oh, well, I watch videos. I'm like, you watch videos? And now it's like, well, that's how we do math. We watch videos and then,
Yeah, exactly.
do it. So it's like, it figures, you say one thing and then of course, 10 years later, 15 years later, here I am.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's definitely not like that at all. And I
Mhm.
mean, my kid is like such a social butterfly. She has so many friends. She could go up to strangers and start a conversation.
Mhm.
If she wants something if we're like at Starbucks or whatever, because of course I'm always at Starbucks. And we sit down and she's like, well, I want blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, here's $5, you need to go and pay. And she does it. I mean,
I know.
it's you know what I mean, we're just out about in the world and it's no problem.
It's
And
Mhm.
very
I
interesting to
just
be out and about in the middle of the day. It's funny, we do
Yeah.
that in our town, and it's like the only people that are out and about are the other
yes.
homeschoolers. So it's
Yes.
other moms, and you kind of share a smile going, yep, well, yep, we're family too, like, because nobody else has got their school age children with them in the middle of the day at
Yeah,
the
exactly.
grocery store.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of a funny sense of a sense of community, even though you don't necessarily know one another. So I love hearing, when homeschoolers are out and about,
Yeah.
and constantly changing that perception. When we were kids, and who was homeschooled then as opposed to who homeschools now, and all the resources available to homeschoolers and things, how different it is. I love that. I feel like we're
Mhm.
constantly changing that perception. So hopefully the next mom will think something different about homeschoolers,
Yeah, right.
before considering it,
Definitely.
and have a different view.
Definitely.
Well, and I think this pandemic has stripped away a lot of the some of the misunderstandings around homeschooling. I think a lot of
Absolutely.
people got that,
Oh,
or
yeah.
in some respect, forced into it.
It stripped away illusions about homeschooling and illusions about public schooling,
Yeah, a lot of it.
and what kids were learning or not learning, and
yeah.
which parents, may have not have known their child was struggling in a subject and found out. And I think it's really helped a lot of folks. So you started with your daughter, and you're continuing with that, and then let's go into what you're doing now. New Jersey has an interesting situation where you can run a pod, which is really fascinating. We would love to know how that got started, and all about how you run that.
Well, New Jersey is interesting in that there's no guidelines whatsoever. There's a couple. Basically, the nutshell is your child has to have the equivalent of a public education. So you could take this however you want.
I was going to say, that can mean a lot of things.
Yes, exactly. And it's fantastic for people, like in my circle, who were so gung-ho about education and having our kids learn and the love of learning, and not necessarily following exactly, the standards of the public schools, but having that interest in, can we help our children really understand what's going on, ask questions, just, like a love of learning and just understanding how to go about learning, different ways to go about learning. It doesn't all have to just come from a textbook. It doesn't have to be done with a worksheet. It doesn't have to be a grade. My daughter recently has just been very curious about public school. And she's like, well, why can't I go to public school? I'm like, you can. That's not, I don't have anything against the public schools, but here is why we do what we do. And as I explained before, it's a timing thing, and that's how it started. But second of all, I'm like, okay, we're driving past the school. It's 9:00 in the morning or 8:45 in the morning. There are all the buses. So all the kids are just getting to school. Oh, okay. So then later that day, 4:00, we're driving past the same school. There are all the buses again.
Yes.
They're just leaving now. They're just leaving now. They're just leaving now. And now they have to go home and do homework.
Our daughter's not even awake when the school bus rolls by.
Exactly.
On our street.
Both the kids woke up at 10:00 this morning, So anyway, I'm sorry, I digress. But
no,
trying to just make her or help her understand that this is just a different way of doing things, not necessarily the way of doing things. So anyway, so New Jersey that's basically the only guideline that we have. My daughter, the school board does not even know that she is in existence. You don't even have to register anything as a homeschooler. There's no test you have to take. There's no, portfolio or anything like that. So that being said, we have so much freedom, and we could go about learning the way that we want. So I think that the word pod, that's really more of a public school thing. So kids that parents really just pulled them out of public school because of the pandemic. What they ended up doing, a lot of pods, is they ended up hiring a teacher, whether they decided to leave the school for, health reasons or whatever, or any kind of belief. But these people were privately hiring these teachers. And they would hire them for maybe a half a day. Then the teacher would go to another pod for a half a day. And that would be their school. I personally don't know any people who have done this. I just hear about it. But what I prefer to call my group is more of a cottage school. But yeah, I just don't call myself a pod just because it's more of a gathering together as almost a supplement to, or an add-on to what they're already doing at home. So the cottage school is more like that. So we're all working on very similar things separately, but then they come to me on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and we put that stuff into practice. So what that could mean is science experiments or grammar or Spanish, nature study, art, history. I mean, it's so many different subjects kind of all woven into the day. But it's all more of a hands-on experience. And all the parents are grateful to me because I'm the one that doesn't mind getting out all the art supplies and making a mess or dissecting the owl pellets, stuff like that. So that's primarily how I structure my cottage school. And I mean, I use so many different things. Do you want me to go into it?
Absolutely,
yeah. We'd love to hear
as many details as you want to share, because it's just a very unique option that I know has emerged in popularity through the pandemic. And I know some people may have the opportunity to form something similar to yours or join something similar to what you're offering. So I'd love to hear how you plan it. You know, what are the expectations for the students when they come into your, the cottage school? You know, how long are they there? What are the lessons look like? And we'll get into later, how do you manage so many children?
Yeah.
So that would be all the things. I'm really interested in all the things.
All right, wonderful. So I have 7 children that come every Tuesday and Wednesday. And the neat thing about it is that it's only 3 families that come. So I have 2 twin boys, a brother and a sister, 2 sisters, and then I have my daughter. Okay. Last year we actually did this as well, and I did not have the twin boys. I had a girl, so we had 6 altogether. Wow. We're all very close, like together, as far as just doing things together as homeschoolers. So we'll go to the park together a lot. We'll do field trips together, just hanging out. So last year, being, things being how they were, we couldn't really plan that much together. Like field trips were kind of off limits. Nobody was doing anything. So toward the end of the summer, I said to some of my friends, would you guys be interested in doing a cottage school? And they were like, really? Like you would do that? Because we've made a big stink about, I don't want to be in charge of anything because I already have my own business and I just want to show up to places and not be in charge. But I said, you know what? I feel like if I want to do something like this, I just have to do it myself. Yeah. And they were like, great. Yes, yes, yes. We had tried other co-ops as far as like more traditionally and with parents all over the place and parents taking turns teaching or helping out and this and that in some manner. We tried a bunch of co-ops and the whole idea of it for us, it just didn't jive. There were too many cooks in the kitchen. Okay. And it got to the point where I was like, I think it's just co-ops that I can't do. It's not a matter of a co-op, finding the right co-op. It's just not a thing that I can do. I want one person in charge. I want one way of doing things. I want one routine. I want one group of kids. So here I am. I did it. So I invited these families to be involved, and they come, like I said, twice a week. And basically the structure of how I do it is when everybody gets here, they come at 10 o'clock. Technically the day is over at 2 o'clock, but it always ends up being around 3:30, 4 o'clock by the time everybody actually leaves. And that's because of add-ons. Sometimes we do a big nature study at the end of the day. Sure. We also hired an art teacher to come, and she does an 1.5-hour class. So she comes every 2 weeks. Neat. Some days we just have a stay day where the kids just run around the yard and, scream a lot and cause mayhem. And it's lovely and wonderful. But basically, the kids come in 10 o'clock, trickle in. There's always something on the table for them to do. There's a big, long farm table. Everybody has a seat. It could be just a coloring page. It could be copy work, but something just general that everybody could do in some shape or form. So that way everybody's kind of entertained right away. I'll usually have some music playing. We went through our Mozart stage. We went through some Beethoven. We went through some Chopin. This week was Diwali. So we were celebrating about that holiday. So I had Indian music on, some Bollywood, and everybody just listens for a couple minutes while we all just get settled, get our writing utensils out, anything that we need. Cool. And once that happens, I take out a book, and that could mean a novel, that could mean just a picture book, but something. And I read to them, and they just entertain themselves. Once they're done with what I have on the table, they're free to go get what I call their busy bag, which was a little gift that I gave them at the beginning of the year. And it has like squishy things in it. It has the pop-it things. It has a chalkboard. It has anything that you could think of. I said they could add to it if they want. So that there's just that option. The only thing is they have to be quiet. They can't talk to one another. They just have to be respectful and listen. And even if they're not interested, it's a matter of respect for everybody else and learning how to be in a group. So we usually do that. We just read The Golden Bull, which is you guys, you interviewed Emily Cook, right?
We did.
Yeah, we did, yes.
Yeah, and that's on her level
her.
1 curriculum. I have it up on the shelf here, ready for next year.
It is so fantastic. You're going to love it.
Oh,
Cool.
Can't wait.
Can't wait.
She always picks the best books.
She does.
Oh, I love her so much. So yeah, the kids, they would just like ask for it. And then I'd put it down. They'd be like, one more chapter. So we just finished it this week, and they were so happy. They felt so accomplished to finish something that long. They were like, this book has 33 chapters, Miss Kristin. Wow. Yeah, that's a long book. But at the same time, they were like, but what's, that's it? Like, what's going to happen with, Zephyr? What's going to happen with, so we do that. Then we have a bit of a morning time. And morning time's always been so tricky for me, which didn't you guys do a couple weeks ago, an episode on that?
Yep.
I think it can look very different for different families.
Yeah, very different. We've seen a wide range. Yeah.
Tricky. Yeah. But I feel like that really helped with this between you guys and the Waldock Way. It really helped to kind of shape my morning time. Cool. But we get together, we kind of we leave the table, we go to the other side of the room, which, by the way, I homeschool the Cottage School on my porch. It's a nice sized porch. It's screened in, but we have plexiglass over it. And then for more warmth, last year my husband got, the plastic that they have in greenhouses.
Yes, yeah.
So he put that up as well. So it's just like, it's such a makeshift room, but it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's part of the greenhouse unit study.
yeah, right.
Heating effect, yes.
And then we have 2 little heaters out here, cool. And that's all we need. It's great. So we leave the table, we go to the other side of the porch. I always have a helper of the day. The helper gets the flag, and we say the Pledge of Allegiance. Cool. And that's kind of a different kind of, I don't know. Every time we say one nation under God, I'm like, it's funny that we're going back to this schooly kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it just it feels so right to do at the same time.
Yeah, it's very
right and wrong.
A lot of times it's very nostalgic. I mean, it goes back to what so part of our experience back when we were in, elementary school. Right. God, that was so long ago. Yeah, the late 80s for me. It was a different, it felt like a different experience, but maybe we're so old. Maybe I'm so old now.
I don't know. It's
I'm
funny.
looking fondly on something. That I really
we had
remember.
this discussion actually before we started recording. Matt and you and I were discussing that. Right. I feel sometimes like our homeschool isn't rigorous enough, and then I'm like, why do I feel like rigor is required? Yes. And then I'm like, oh, it's because I went to 13 years of public school, and rigor was the word of the day. So I feel like there's a lot of deprogramming that has to happen. And some stuff we want to keep, like you're saying, like doing the pledge and things. It's like, yeah, it's so programmed in at this point, and we can choose to do or not do, but it's just interesting how much it influences us even as adults.
Yeah, right.
What we went through.
So how many, what are the age ranges that you're looking at with these? Obviously your daughter's, I think 7, but how about the other kids?
So I have ages 6, and they're new 6-year-olds to age 8.
Wow.
So it's kindergarten through 3rd grade.
Did you find any challenges being able to group educate with different age ranges, or does it just kind of flow naturally?
Yeah, it really flows naturally.
Okay.
At first, I was kind of worried about it, but the way that I have it structured, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's so open-ended that it's like, well, hey, 8-year-old, you can draw a picture and you can write about this.
Yeah.
And kindergartner, you just draw a picture and you want to write one word? No? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you do? This is how you write it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it's just so easily adaptable to each kid that I just love it.
Well, it's funny. It's funny how it took a pandemic for us to go back to the old like one-room schoolhouse.
I know, I love that
type of idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now the question maybe that I have for you is that you own your dance studio, you do your business there, you have your daughter who you've been homeschooling. Now you're running, in essence, you're an educator for, half a dozen children. Did you have to learn anything to become a better educator of multiple children, right? We've always talked about kindergarten teachers dealing with 20 kids, and then, homeschoolers dealing with 1, 2, maybe 3. But now you're kind of in the middle there. Was there any hurdles for you as an educator to jump, or did you feel like you've had enough experience in the past?
Well, I think teaching dance, since I do teach many different levels. I mean, we're talking toddlers to high schoolers. That has helped a lot. And just knowing that this age child, they're capable pretty much of this. Now, I didn't know as far as this child, this age group can read, or this age group can spell spaghetti. I didn't know as far as academically, but I had been around enough kids of multiple ages to kind of gauge what we're trying to do. And it took probably a year to really break me in,
Yeah, absolutely.
And the main thing that I took away from last year doing Cottage School was just take a breath and be patient, because the kids know.
Yeah.
and try to do less as well. I had so much that I wanted to do last year with all the kids that it became more like a check it off the list, keep going, do this. We don't have time for your story. We don't have blah, blah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas this year, I'm like, I know I need to take some things away. I have to. And I think that's part of the reason why things are going the way they are this year, as far as just feeling more relaxed and just feeling so comfortable with each other. Because if so-and-so wants to say, we're talking about nouns.
Yeah.
This happened the other day. And so-and-so says, my dog's name is blah, blah, blah. And do you know what happened the other day with blah, blah, blah? Well, what happened? Blah, da, 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 da. Oh, you know what? That's a noun. Da, da, da. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
You
just
bring it
like
back to the conversation. Yeah.
Yes. And everybody was interested, and trying to keep that flow going rather than like, okay, we don't have time for that now. Let's move on to this. We have to do Spanish. Watch the video. How can we tie this into something else that we're all kind of intrigued with?
Okay.
So are you using I'm curious about scope and sequence of the school, and because that's something you need to communicate to the parents. This is what we're going to be doing this year. Are you telling them these are the subjects and this is how far we're going to go, or are you pulling in some curriculums and doing pieces of those? I mean, how do you decide what you're going to teach and to communicate that to the other parents?
So yes, all of that. I'm using so many pieces of curriculum. I can't even say like that. Well, I guess I could primarily say I'm using Blossom and Root, but I dip out of it in so many different ways that I don't want to commit to it. But if you look at, say, Blossom and Root grade 2, I follow their science and kind of look at what she offers. So the way that she has it structured is that there's all these options. Is your child good at looking at videos and learning that way? Do they want to look at picture books? Do they want to do labs or experiments? Do they want to do this? So I pick and choose these different things. And the other parents, usually they have like Blossom and Root as well. So they're doing it at home too. And I just make a Trello board and share it with them and say, this is what I'm planning for the next couple of weeks. I'm going to do experiment A. I'm going to read this book and we're going to watch this video. So that way, if they want to do some of the other things, they're more than welcome to do that. They're free to do that.
Wow, what a cool use of Trello. I like that idea.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's a neat way to communicate with
so
them.
Well.
So then you're picking out pieces from, Blossom and Root and other curriculums and pulling those in. Are you committing to, this is how far we're going to study this year, or just is it more about exposure and experience because this is an add-on class, or are you really trying to get some basics down?
Definitely trying to get some basics down.
Okay.
Now I'm doing it in such a way that it's fun for everybody to do as a group, but like where everybody goes home and they kind of have their own way of doing it, whether they're just reading one of the spines or they're looking at a video or this and that. For my daughter that's doing the cottage school, this is all she's getting from that. So I'm definitely doing it in a way that in these 2 days, here we go. We're done with science. Mm-hmm. And that way, if we want to take things further, if she decides, I really like this about roots, I want to learn more about it, we have that flexibility. But if she is kind of done with it, she feels fine about it, then we're fine too.
Oh, I had an additional question regarding the cottage school. Are the parents that are, sending their kids to you, is this their plan going forward? And is this your plan going forward to do the cottage school going forward? Or is there like an endpoint here?
There's no endpoint in sight, and we hope that there isn't.
Cool.
Last year, the kids, when we were breaking for summer, and I don't know, we didn't get around to like talking about like, oh, cottage school is ending for the summer until probably 2 weeks beforehand.
I see.
One of the kids looked at me and said, what do you mean? What do you mean no more cottage school? And I said, well, it's summer break. We all have different things to do during the summer. And she looked at her mom and gave her this look like, what? How can this be? And my daughter was like, wait, are you kidding? You mean my friends aren't going to be coming over every week? Yeah. This isn't happening. And I said, yeah, this is summer. We have different things to do during the summer. And the kids were all like, well, how long is this going to go on? Can we just always come to cottage school? And I said, sure, guys. I have a great yard right here. We'll set up for graduation. We'll have prom. So, I mean, who knows? But hopefully for the next couple of years, we have such a nice core group.
That's awesome.
I don't see it ending anytime soon, and I really hope it doesn't.
Well, then the reverse question is this potentially, a school? Is this something you want to grow into like your dance operation that you have going? Is this something you want to make into a larger, kind of local partnership type of thing?
Perhaps. Okay. That takes a lot of work, guys.
It does. Oh, I know. No, I know. Yeah.
And it's a lot with the studio as it is, and
exactly.
Trying to get the word out and all that. So for now, and probably for the foreseeable future, it's really just going to be people that I'm close to and I trust dearly. Absolutely. And and that brings a whole set of guidelines. Then if it was it's technically a school,
Yeah, right.
I'd probably have to register with the state. I'd probably have to get special insurance.
Yeah.
Whereas this, it's almost like a glorified babysitting. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I have a feeling that we'll have like this group. Hopefully they'll keep going up. And then maybe my son's group will start, you know what I mean? And I'll have like a little preschool group, and maybe I'll have an upper school and a lower school.
That would be great.
And and hopefully I'll have energy to do it because I'm tired.
No, it's a lot of work. No,
I'm sure
I'm just
is.
marveling at the time you spend. I mean, it's just amazing.
So I'm kind of interested in, one of the advantages that we always talk about with homeschoolers is, though we are not teachers and not trained teachers, we know our kids, better than anyone. And so for us, we're able to really tell when things aren't clicking and, find what works. And, because we're just so close to our kids, you kind of have neither of those things, right? Because you have other people's children that you're educating. How has that been different than educating your own daughter? You did homeschool with her. Now you're bringing in this extended group, even though they're, children of friends. How's that dynamic shifted between it being, just you and your daughter to, having to adapt to different learning styles and things of other children?
Sure. It's been so great, to tell you the truth. Looking back to that beautiful, sweet time when my daughter was itty bitty and we are doing things just the two of us, it was great. But she is such a little social butterfly that having that break from the one-on-one has actually, I think, benefited her. So and we always had a bit of that too, because she would come to the studio and take dance class. So she got to, I don't know, we have like this dual relationship in a way. So she knows me as mama, but she also knows me as Miss Kristin. So at the studio, it'd be like, well, she's the teacher, I'm the student. And it's amazing how she kind of fell into that. We both fell into those two roles. And she knew, there are certain things I could do at home that I can't do at the studio. So that same kind of dynamic has also carried over into the cottage school. As far as getting to know the kids, I knew them before, but I think that getting to know them without their parents around, has been so valuable because whenever other people are around, other parents around, and this goes back to, I think, why the co-op didn't really work for me, was because you want to talk to the other parents and you want to see what everybody's doing, and you're so starved for adult time. But being that no other parents are here, it's all about the kids.
Yeah.
And it's all about what we need. And it's just those days where I could read the room and I know what these kids need. And I have those Trello boards planned until week 32.
Yeah.
And it's like I plan out everything so much. And this is what we're doing here. This is go down the list. But if there's something that we need, if there's something that is not clicking, well, just throw it out the window and find a new way to do it. Or you know what? Don't do it at all. Yeah. The other day we went out. We're learning about all different types of plants. And being that it's autumn here, all the leaves are beautiful, and it's just it's one of those years that it's been warm. So I'm like, you know what? Throw your shoes on, guys. We're going outside. We're collecting leaves. I want everybody to collect at least 5 different leaves. I'm giving you 30 seconds, which is really 5 minutes, but I want them to hustle. So they all do that, come back, and I look at them and I'm like, ooh, guys, I feel it. You are not ready to come inside. Here, make a big pile of your leaves. But these are my leaves and these are my leaves. That's okay. We're going to pull them all together, put them right here. Are you sure? I'm sure. We need all these leaves mixed together. Okay. So now everybody, we're going to do 5 laps around the yard. On your mark, get set, go. They all look at me. What? Really? I said, yeah. And the boys are like, yeah, run in. I'm like, you need to run faster. And the girls are like, okay. And they're following the boys. And I'm like, come on, beat the boys. Go, try to get them. And when one of them is like, I'm really tired, Miss Kristin, I'm really tired. I'm like, then you need to walk and breathe deep. And it's just like, that's what they needed. I'm like, you guys, your laps are getting smaller and smaller. What lap are you on? They're like 3. I'm like, you have 2 more, make it bigger. They come back after the 5 laps and they're hilarious. They're laughing and they're puffing and puffing. And then I looked at them and I said, yep, you're now ready to go back in.
Yeah, right.
So it was just like one of those moments where let's read the crowd. And they came back in and they were ready to sit again. And we were ready to go through our leaves and we were ready to identify and we were ready to look at some of the books, like the spine books, and explore and talk about it. So I just, that has been invaluable. And then just seeing who needs more help and how could I help them and how could I make them more independent? Because I want all the kids to be more independent and be able to work. Our whole last part of the day after lunch, and they have a little recess break, is stations where it's all hands-on kind of stuff. So, there's your science lab. There's your, let's see, what else do we do? A lot of art, history logs, so many different things. It's all that stuff that I want them to be able to do on their own. And I'll bring everybody in from recess and, I'll show. And they're like, well, I'm like, nope, you have to listen. We're all in this together. I know you're excited. I know you want to choose your partner, but this is what we're doing. And you just need to control yourself. That is super important to me too. And that's another thing, being around homeschool kids and seeing they're just not used to working as a group necessarily. And, whatever. And that's fine, but it's not fine for me.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want my daughter to be able to enter a class and respect the teacher and know how to raise her hand and know when it's okay to speak and when it's okay, when you have to just hold back a little bit. So that's a big deal to me, respecting each other and knowing what's okay and what's not okay. So I show them around. We usually have 3 stations. I explain everything. Say, okay, do you have any questions? Because this is your time to ask. Okay, and we go over it again or we don't. And then the helper of the day gets to choose his or her own partner. And they get to choose where they want to start as well. So it's very fair. The helper of the day, everybody looks forward to being the helper of the day. So that way everybody's pretty independent. And I could just pretty much stand in the center of the room and look around and say, okay, who needs help with what? And I'll just, dart to that spot, help them. Go to another spot, help them. If it's a really involved day, my mother-in-law comes and watches the 2-year-old. So in the afternoon, he goes down for a nap, but she's still hanging out. And I say, hey, Grammy, you want to come in and play a game with everybody? She's like, sure. And everybody loves Grammy, so they're like, I want to play the game with Grammy. I want to do the matching tree game with Grammy. I want to do, it's cute. It's That's wonderful.
Awesome. I love it. It's just such a more natural feeling to school than the, very structured, rigid of other schools. I think that's really great. So you've had this experience now. You've homeschooled your daughter. You've run this cottage school for quite a while now, and so you kind of understand what do you wish you knew when you started? Like what advice would you give if somebody wants to start their own cottage school or wants to homeschool? I think that you have a really unique position that most parents don't have, and maybe they're thinking about doing something similar.
Yeah. Well, I am constantly learning and constantly changing and adapting. So when all of this started, and my daughter was preschool-ish age, I started listening to a lot of podcasts. And at that point, Pam Barnhill, she had
Mhm.
like 50 podcasts out.
Yeah.
But there was one, and I can't even remember the name of it. She doesn't do it anymore. But it basically looked into the homes of different homeschoolers and how they did things so differently and how that was okay. And it just opened my eyes so much to, wow, this doesn't have to be one prescribed thing. Um, and that just changed it for me completely. So just learn everything that you can and try it out. And if it doesn't work, trash it.
Yeah,
Try something else.
I agree.
Do that for a little bit. That doesn't work, tweak it a little bit. But, above all, you don't have to be married to one specific thing. You could always change it. You could always say, this is working for right now, but will it work for 6 months from now? Will it work next week? Will it work when she's in high school? Well, no. So this is just kind of a funny thing that my husband, he's a musician, and he told me this quote that he learned in college, and it's by the musician Charlie Parker, and it has a little bad word in it, but I'm just going to read it for you, and take what you want from it. But this has helped me with everything in my life. So he said, first you learn the instrument, then you learn the music, then you forget all that shit and just play.
Exactly.
And that's what I do. I feel like I just play,
Yeah.
I plan everything out to the best of my ability, and then I play with it and change it
You're
and adapt it.
you're absolutely right. It reminds me a lot of, in a lot of respects, when you play sports. You spend all this time learning how to play the sport, you practice and everything, but once you get into the game, you don't think about, okay, how do I move my feet? How do I make my jump shot or
Yeah,
whatever?
it comes naturally.
It becomes a natural thing. And I think that's been a big thing that I've realized over the last 2 years. It's just the learning and education thing. Just, I think less about the mechanics of what I'm doing, and it becomes more of a flow. And it sounds like, you've kind of fallen into that as well. And you've got, this wonderful, cottage school, and you're learning that all the time. And, you're experiencing that, and you're having to go with the flow in a manner that I think a lot of homeschool parents maybe don't even have to do that at that level. But it's great to hear how you've been able to adapt and change and pivot and, really build something that's really amazing.
I think it's really neat, as homeschoolers, we have the ability to just play.
I think that's
right.
Yeah.
Because, if you were teaching a group of kids in another situation, if this were a public school, there's rules. Teachers can't just play.
Yeah.
They can't see what the room needs and do that. They can't decide to, let's do recess right now. And, that flexibility that we have to read the room, to pay attention to what the kids need, to say, I had a plan and that's not working. And just, go with our gut and do something different. It's one of the things I really love. We get these curriculums and we follow them. And sometimes, Matt, you'll come to me and go, well, the curriculum says this. And he's like, but I don't think they're going to be into that. And I was like, well, don't do it.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Right.
Yeah. By who? There's no, the homeschool police are not going to come and say you didn't do that science experiment today, because the kids wouldn't have liked it. Right. And you want to learn about something else. So it's this freedom of choice, and having all the options. Sometimes that can be a little paralyzing to have so many choices, but I love every day the ability to make our own decisions about how we're going to teach our kids and what we're going to teach them, and find something that they are interested in. Because at the end of the day, is my kid going to remember all the facts and figures that I told them? No. I want them to have a love of learning, basic core knowledge as a human being on this planet, and a love of learning that will carry them through their lives.
Yeah.
That's what I want to leave them with.
I'd rather drive the stagecoach than pull the donkey up the mountain.
Yeah, really.
Right.
I don't care if they graduate high school not knowing all the parts of the cell. Right. Like, I could care less. I didn't remember by the time I got there. I felt like so much of school was drilling of information. We're going to pump this information into you, and then you're going to regurgitate it all over a test, and then you're going to forget about it next month.
I mean, it's useful, once you become, like an engineer like yourself and stuff, you have to know certain things.
I mean, there are things that you need to understand, but even that, it's not like I go to work and I don't have my engineering textbook there. If I need to look up a formula, I don't have to memorize it. I got to go to page 59 and look it up.
Yeah, that's life. I mean, as long as you're one step ahead, right?
Exactly.
Right.
As long as you know what you got to do.
Go.
Yeah. This whole thing about information, and I was talking to a mom earlier today who's concerned about, I don't know if I can teach this subject. I don't know if I understand enough about it to teach a middle school subject. And I said, well, what do you remember from middle school? What did you remember from middle school when you were even in high school? She's like, I lost all that stuff so quickly. I said, right. The only things I remember are the experiences. I remember some projects. I remember some field trips, some particularly important books I read. I don't remember 99% of everything else, what was happening day to day in that class. And so what was the value of that? Yeah. Because I really clearly didn't get anything out of it. I'd much rather build rich experiences and instill this love of learning. And so I love that you get to do that at your school for these other kids and for your daughter too. I think it's just really special.
And it's great. It's great for her to see how other kids go about learning as well. Because if it's just her and I, it's like, well, let's look at this book. Well, she's not so into that. Yeah. But once we see other kids doing it, she's like, oh yeah, look, this, my best friend is looking in this book. Let's look together. And that's something that we do with the spines, because sometimes they get a little dry. I mean, they're beautiful textbooks in a way, you know what I mean? But I just pass them out and say, okay, what do you find interesting on this page? And then we share about it, and we read out loud, and that's like great practice for them to just read to each other. And you know what? Some can't read, and that's okay. I just help. And we're all understanding of each other, and we all know that we're in different stages. So it's been such a growing experience for my daughter as well as everybody else. Because they'll go home and say, oh, well, so-and-so is doing this. I want to do that. So it's giving them that peer pressure,
The peer pressure in a good way.
In a good way.
To want to participate. And I think that's terrific. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Thank you so much, Kristin, for talking with us. This has been really unique and gave me a cool glimpse into that possibility of cottage schools in certain states. It's really, really neat.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time.
Happy homeschooling!